Alex here with part 17 of the Respondent. This chapter was lengthy, but mostly a summary of the entire book. So there were only two things that jumped out at me as discussion points, but the two things are actually very important. So first, he talks about his giving up. Why he gave up, why he decided to stop the litigation process. Part of it, he says, is for the best interest of his kids to stop the litigation process. Part of it is that it's an exercise in futility. Part of it is, in a way, him pointing out the importance of getting his own house in order before he goes about getting other people's houses in order. Something about, I think he quotes a Marcus Aurelius writing, something called Meditations. It's definitely a book that I've heard about before, but I haven't read. From what I understand, it's an ancient book with sage advice. All those are very valid points. In fact, I've done videos on these topics. One of the videos is growing fast, which talks about the importance of not only growing, but also growing quickly, because it's going to impact your child custody case, to be quite frank. And that seems to be one of the reasons why he struggled so much in his own custody case and why he made so many mistakes early on. And then the other is giving up, and it's giving up with a question mark, because it is a complicated question with a complicated answer. And I can't really summarize the video giving up. You really have to go and watch it for yourself. It should still be out there. If it's not out there, it may have been lumped into the video helping you help yourself. So first take a look for the video giving up, and if you can't find it, then take a look at the video helping you help yourself. And it's just, in my experience, there are more likely to be temporary giving ups than there are just to sort of completely walk away from the entire case. And I explain why in that video. So definitely recommend you watch that video if you've ever thought about it. Because if you've ever heard, there's two other extreme versions of this advice. One of them is never give up, they're your kids. And it's not good advice. And the other one is it's hopeless, just walk away. Which is kind of what used to happen way back in the day when it was just not only well known, but the official sort of approach of the court to give custody of the children to the mother by default. And so back then it was, don't even try. What are you doing? You're crazy. Just let it happen. And now you have some of these people saying, never give up, always, keep fighting. And they both can really ruin your life to follow either one of those pieces of advice. In the video giving up, I explain more as to why it's complicated and how you may need to give up now only to pick up the torch again later on. The other thing in the chapter that I found, well, I guess valuable to talk about, but terrible advice, is he says that you should reach out to anyone that you know that's going through a high conflict custody case and offer assistance. And the reason this advice is terrible is because he makes it seem like there are going to be lots of people who need help, and they may be reluctant, and you have to really, insist for them to agree to let you help them. But that's only going to be in some situations. If you reach out to the high conflict party, they're going to love getting help from you. And so you could very well be putting yourself into a high conflict child custody case in a way that damages the case, hurts the children, and ruins your own life. And I think people instinctively know this, or at least they just don't want to get involved because they're conflict averse, or maybe they know the other side and they just don't want to get between the two of you. But a lot of times I think it's just that people just don't know the whole story, and they just don't want to get into something like that. They don't want to, forge an alliance with one side. And the advice that he offers is terrible. It's actually talked about in one of my videos. I think I refer to them as bankrollers, and this is specific to the people who need money to litigate their case. And they're looking for somebody to bankroll their case and pay for their litigation, pay for their appeals, and how the people who are doing this, if you're helping the targeted parent, great. If you're not, you're making things worse. And how is a person supposed to really find out who is the good guy and who's the bad guy in one of these high conflict child custody cases without any personal experience, without any training? There's no way that they're going to have a clue. So much of it is counterintuitive. It's very easy for the conflict parent to point out certain things that make it look like obviously they're the good person and that the other person's abusive, only to find out later on that those are things that they pointed out that either don't have the whole truth behind them or are one of those counterintuitive areas. For example, right of first refusal. You could go up to any random person and say, hey, my ex would rather put their put our kids with a babysitter while he's at work, then let me have them. And people who don't understand high conflict child custody are going to listen to that and think, wow, he's evil. And so you really, this terrible advice to just offer to help anyone that's in one of these situations. It just is. And all it does is really point out why people need to actually see what's going on in these cases. Because you can't figure out what to do as a society just by reading articles and by getting anecdotes from people who are going through the system. So it's really more and more I just continue to see why it's important to get these cases out into the public light, because until you do, it's just going to be a tremendous amount of misinformation, and there's just no way anybody from the outside could or even should help. Even family members. I mean, even family members can make things worse. There's situations where family members don't have a clue what's going on, and you'd be like, what? How is that possible? They're like directly connected to the person going through the case. Well, oftentimes the person that's going through the case won't reveal the full truth to their family. And not just oftentimes, I would say most of the time, they're not going to reveal the whole truth. So this is really, I mean, I think maybe he has good intentions here because he feels like he could have used help, or he got help that he feels saved his life. But to give everybody else that advice without much more of a precaution, of a warning, of a disclaimer is not good. So those are the two things that I would like to talk about. He goes into an epilogue. I didn't find anything valuable or noteworthy to discuss in the epilogue, but after the epilogue, he goes into the psychiatric reports, or whatever they're called, the evaluation reports, custody evaluation reports. This is great. In fact, I think I talked about this in part 16, is that I think I mentioned I really would have appreciated to at least have those reports. If I remember correctly, that's something that I said, and it looks like my wish has been granted, because at the end of the book, it sounds like it's a verbatim accounting of the reports, which is good, because that's what I would prefer rather than a summary from him. And no, that's no offense to him. That's just what I would prefer. That's how I would judge what's going on, or to see if I could give any more insight on Mr. Ellis's experiences. So in the next video, which will be part 18 of the Respondent, I will go through those reports. It looks like it's like an hour-long summary, so it might take me a while. Maybe I'll get it out tomorrow. Maybe it'll take me a couple days. If you guys have any questions, feel free to post them down in the comments below, and I will see you guys next time.